Hello, and welcome to another edition of Boomer versus Gen Z Financial Experts React. I'm Gordon Ochterman, and I'm joined by my business partner, Jeremy Epley. Today, we're going to be talking about the Ticketmaster settlement and what does that mean for consumers? How did we get here in the first place? Well, back in 2010, Ticketmaster, who handles the transactions of buying tickets to a lot of different live events, particularly concerts, merged with Live Nation, which was and still is a concert venue operator and involved in other parts of the whole industry of live performance. So as a boomer, I have been going to concerts for many years. I'm a big rock fan. And so maybe this issue is a lot more important to me than some people. Maybe other boomers can relate to this. I suspect it's not such a big deal to my Gen Z companion here. But Jeremy, why don't you tell us about what the settlement actually contained?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gordon. I don't attend very many concerts personally, so it doesn't affect me quite a lot. But I know that a lot of Gen Z fans are huge into music and they love to go to concerts. I think all of this started, or at least it was highlighted in the public eye by Taylor Swift's Eras tour, and there was a whole difficulty for fans to get tickets, and there was a whole lot of problems with queues and garbage fees, and it was just very expensive. And I believe Taylor Swift herself came out and said, this is not what I wanted for the experience for my fans. And it got a lot of attention by politicians and such. And in 2024, the Biden administration brought a lawsuit against Live Nation, which owns Ticketmaster. And they were joined by 30 other states with their attorneys generals, where they claimed that Ticketmaster had monopoly power over the industry and wanted to see if they could maybe break up Live Nation, who owns quite a few amphitheaters, I believe a large chunk of the major amphitheaters across the United States, and Ticketmaster. And I believe Saturday was when the term sheet of the settlement was at least shared with the judge. I forget if it was released on Saturday or Sunday to the public. But the term sheet essentially is the federal government, the Department of Justice, settling with Live Nation. And they're going to be capping Ticketmaster service fees at 15% or lower for Live Nation amphitheater events. That is an attempt to cut out some of the junk fees that were being applied on these purchases that upset a lot of consumers. Additionally, Live Nation is going to need to divest 13 amphitheaters. So in this is not a forced divestiture for between Live Nation and Ticketmaster. They're just having to divest some amphitheaters. Additionally, they are creating a $280 million fund, which is essentially a fine. The $280 million fund is going to be for the state's claims and penalties. It sounds like a large number, but it actually is only about 1% of Live Nation's revenue of about $25 billion. So it is, in my opinion, closer to a slap on the wrist than an actual fine or penalty for wrongdoing. Additionally, there's going to be extended DOJ oversight for an 8-year consent decree. I'm not sure how in-depth the oversight goes, but essentially I would kind of characterize it as probation for a company. And then I think the two larger concessions that came out of this deal was that now venues are going to be allowed to sell a portion of tickets on non-Ticketmaster platforms. Essentially, Ticketmaster went around and used what's alleged as monopoly power to say, well, if you want to use Ticketmaster, you should be using our amphitheaters. And then Live Nation went around saying, well, if you want to use our large amphitheaters, which are some of the only options in some states or cities, or at least the best options for various regions, you have to use Ticketmaster. And if you use Ticketmaster, you can't use other platforms like SeatGeek or such. So essentially, is that monopoly power is being slightly reduced, where now venues are able to sell not on non-Ticketmaster platforms. And for Live Nation owned and operated amphitheaters, it allows up to 50% of tickets to be sold through any marketplace, not just the Ticketmaster marketplace.
These are all good steps, but my worry is that it's not really enough to make any kind of measurable dent in the growth of ticket prices in general. One of the things that it doesn't address is the dynamic pricing model, which is a fairly new innovation where consumers are basically bidding against each other for seats and the prices change constantly. So there's little distinction between buying the seat on the primary market and the secondary market. It used to be, all the seats were one price, or maybe floor seats were more than on the side or the back or different sections, orchestra more than balcony. But the only way you pay more is if you go through a scalper, often of a shady legality for people to resell tickets. But now it's essentially a free for all where it's all the resale market or it's all prices are constantly fluctuating like they do in the resale market based on the speed of ticket uptake by consumers, based on what AI predicts the demand will be for a particular show by a particular artist at a particular time. Recently, I was looking to go to a show at Jiffy Lube Live, which is in Northern Virginia here near me, which is a Live Nation venue. And prices for any of the orchestra seats were about $2,000, whereas just a couple of years ago, my son and I saw them for considerably less than that. Same artist, not any more or less popular than they were then. But this dynamic pricing and proliferation of requiring that you buy a VIP package to sit in the best seats. These are all innovations to force people to pay more and more and not necessarily passing on those higher prices to the artists. When the merger first happened, Pearl Jam was a very popular grunge act, got their start in the 90s, and they have fought against Ticketmaster from the get-go. So there has been some artist pushback, but most artists have really kind of just been forced to cave in to this monopoly because oftentimes they have contracts with their record companies where they have to, do a certain amount of support for their records. And so the only way that they can do that is, by funneling a lot of that business through this monopoly. So it'll be really interesting to me to see, will this open up enough of a crack for other companies to come in and actually take some market share? Or will this be a slap on the wrist with changes that don't meaningfully address the trend, which is higher and higher prices?
I would say having the marketplace opened, capitalism, competition definitely will drive down prices. However, is it really an open marketplace now? I believe that all the quotes that I've seen for the term sheet says up to 50% of the tickets can be sold on other marketplaces. Up to is 0 to 50%. And, I guess the question is, who makes that determination? Does the venue, does Ticketmaster, does the artist? And if it's not truly an open marketplace, or it's like a semi-open marketplace, is it still just a monopoly that has been slightly slowed down? I don't know if there's actual impact there.
It's very confusing. There are all these different ticket venues. You mentioned SeatGeek, I think. There's Vivid Seats. And I think several of them are owned by Ticketmaster anyway, or they have very close ties. So it remains to be seen. Yeah, will those other companies that have contractual agreements with Ticketmaster, will they be considered part of that up to 50%? or will it have to be truly independent entities that are given a chance?
Yeah, the impact to the consumer, I guess, is will be unknown. We'll definitely be following that. But do you have any deeper insights other than like, I guess we'll wait and see if this ends up working?
um, Unfortunately, not too much. Um, a political person was telling me the other day that had a lot of experience being interviewed on news shows, and they said, you know, you really can limit your answers to three things: either it's going to get better, it's going to get worse, or it's too early to tell. And I think this is one of those, it's too early to tell for sure, like most situations. But, you know, that's why we keep abreast of the news. And I'm hopeful that this will be some change, but I'm cynical that it'll be really significant. I think that, you know, prices rarely go down, you know, unless it's something like oil when they really rapidly increase the supply of, and so gas prices go down. But most things, people get used to a certain price. But if it can slow the growth of prices and make Ticketmaster a little more cognizant of the narrow ice that they're on as far as consumers' tolerance of their predatory behavior, then it's a good thing.
One other topic that I wanted to cover around this was just something I found interesting that I've seen a change over time is the politics behind antitrust and trying to break up monopolies and such. Historically, it seems to have become very much a left versus right, liberals being anti-monopoly, trying to be antitrust and break up big companies, versus Republicans would be more comfortable with larger companies, be free market, try not to affect what is happening in the economy or what's happening with capitalism. And that was definitely the case back with like Reagan and such, I would say. However, nowadays with Trump, we see he definitely has a more populist type of conservative movement, and he has been more comfortable going on these antitrust fights versus past Republican administrations. There's maybe some ulterior motives there. We've definitely seen the Trump administration bring cases against what were at least perceived as political adversaries or companies that didn't treat him the way that he wanted. We saw that with some of the enforcement action against some of the big tech companies where you saw Meta deplatform him, and he claimed that they were biased against conservative voices. So it is interesting to see the shift, and we'll see if it continues beyond the Trump era, if it is more so his way of doing politics, of being more on the stick side than the carrot side, or if it really is now a shift for the Republican base where they appreciate and expect more protections against large corporations.
Well, you know, the original trust buster, Teddy Roosevelt, was a Republican, possibly my favorite president ever, and justifiably up there on Mount Rushmore. So I think there's a lot that could be done in this area if done right. I hope it does bode well for limiting monopolies and bringing them back down to earth a bit. But I'm a bit cynical. There's always the danger of using the threat of something to coerce certain behaviors. And we've certainly seen this in the Trump playbook in the past. His attitude toward monopolistic practices may be part of that pattern. You know, it kind of depends. Do you see Trump as a change agent or as a pretender to change that is really supporting the people that he represents, his base or the billionaire class? Like most political figures, it's complicated. He does some of each. So I don't want to tell anybody what to think about that.
All right. Well, I think those are all great points. I found this news interesting. We'll see how it develops, and long term, if this settlement is approved by the judge and the states go along with it, and there aren't big changes that come in the following weeks and months. I guess we'll see long term if there's a big impact to ticket prices, and hopefully, for your sake, Gordon, there is, and everyone can enjoy some great concerts.
Indeed.
Check us out next week for our next video around whatever is crossing the news headlines at that point. See you then. Hey everyone, today is April 17th. We originally recorded the video back in March 13th, and there have been big updates since then. The state attorney generals continued their case against Ticketmaster Live Nation, and the big update now is that a jury has found in favor of the state prosecutors, have found that Live Nation and Ticketmaster are acting as a monopoly. This just came out. We'll have to see what the official repercussions are. They haven't gotten to essentially sentencing or repercussions where it's possible that they'll still try to break up the company more so than the federal settlement require them to do. This will also go for quite a bit longer through appellate courts and such, while the federal settlement will proceed. So it'll be interesting to see like these two separate cases continue, where the federal settlement with those terms, assuming that they're approved and followed through on, we'll see some divestiture and some settlement funds, and then we might see even further actions brought on by the jury's decision. We'll just have to see, and we'll keep you updated if there's any big news in the future.
It's a battle won for the consumer, but the war continues, and we'll see what the ultimate remedy is and whether that really has a positive impact for consumers or if it's just more business as usual.
We won't be seeing any kind of ticket prices fall anytime soon, but maybe in the long term, we'll see.